All right, guys, so we have basically a real-time application, real-time polling application, but it doesn't save any votes, okay? You can vote, and if someone else has the screen open, they'll see that response using Pusher, but it's not really a great application because it doesn't save or persist the data. So what we're going to do is create a database. Now, instead of deploying a local MongoDB database, I'm going to use MLab, which is a great service that gives you a free MongoDB database. Obviously, if you have to scale it to production, then you'll have to pay. But what we're doing is free, so no credit card needed. Just sign up for MLab. If any of you guys are Node.js developers, I'm sure you already have an account. But we're going to create a new database. And you can choose different providers, different cloud providers. I'm going to choose the Amazon Sandbox, which is free, and click Continue. Choose US East. My database name I'm going to call PusherPoll. And we're going to say Submit Order. Okay, everything's free. 0.5 gigs of data, I think. And once this turns green, there we go. Now this PusherPoll database is active, so I'm going to click on it. And we need to create a user. So I'm going to click Users and Add Database User. I'm just going to use Brad for my username and password. All right, so now up here, you'll see the connection string when we want to connect to this database. Yours will be different. And then that's it. That's all we have to do for now. We don't have to add collections. Those will get added automatically. So we can go ahead and just minimize that. And then let's implement Mongoose. Now we already installed it in the beginning. You can see if we look in our dependencies, Mongoose is right here. So I'm going to create a model. All right, Mongoose uses models and schemas. So we're going to create a new folder called models. And we're going to have a model called vote.js, okay? And I gave that a capital because my models I like to uppercase. All right, now to create a model, we're gonna first bring in Mongoose. So we're gonna say require Mongoose. We'll do the connection in a minute. And then we need to create schema. Set that to mongoose.schema. And then we're going to say const vote schema. And let's set that to a new schema. Okay, this is going to take in an object of fields. We're only going to have an OS field, which we give a type, and that's going to be a string. Okay, and then let's say required, let's set that to true. All right, and then we'll put a comma here, and next we'll have points, which I'm going to set to type string and set the required to true. Okay, so those are the only fields we need in our schema. Now what we're going to do is go underneath the vote schema, and let's say create collection and add schema. So to do that, we'll create a variable called vote, set it to mongoose.model, and it's going to take in the model name, which is going to be vote, and then the schema, which will be vote schema. All right, then we just want to export it, so we'll say module.exports equals vote. And that's it. That's our model. So we'll save. Now we need to connect to MongoDB. So we could put all the stuff in the app.js, but what I'm going to do is create a config file. So we'll create a new folder called config. And let's call this, we'll just call it db.js. Okay, and in here we're going to bring in Mongoose. So we'll say require Mongoose. And then we're going to say mongoose.connect. It's actually going to give us a promise, so no semicolon. And then we want to put in our connection string. So this is actually going to be in the mlab. Let's see, is this it? Yeah. So this right here, this string right here, I'm going to grab that and just put that in. And I'm going to change the user to the one I used, which was Brad, and then use the password I used, which is also Brad. Okay, yours will be different. And then the promise we need to use .then. And we're just gonna do a console.log, and we'll just say MongoDB connected. Okay, and if there's an error, we'll do .catch, so that'll take an error if there is one, and then we'll just console.log that. Okay, and that's it. That's all we need here. Actually, one more thing. I think we still need to do this, map global promises, because before, I haven't used Mongoose in maybe a month and a half or so. We were getting an error message, or not an error, but a warning about promises, and we had to do mongoose dot promise and then map it to global dot promise. So we just have to add that in. That should be an uppercase P. Whoops. Like that, and we should be good. We'll just say Mongoose connect and save. So prettier, just kind of clean that up for me. And then we're going to go into our app.js, and we need to bring in that DB config file. So I'm going to go right here, DB config. So we just want to require ./config and then DB, just DB, and that should bring it in. So let's save, and then down here, notice it now says MongoDB connected. All right, so we're making good time here. Let's now go to our routes poll.js file, and from here we're going to bring in Mongoose. Okay, we'll bring in Mongoose, and there's basically two things we want to do. One is get the votes, because we want to initially display them here. The other is to actually add the vote to the database when it's submitted. So we're going to do the add first. So what we'll do is when we hit this endpoint, when we click vote, instead of just automatically just triggering this to the client, we need to save it in the database. So let's push this down a little bit, and I'm going to create a variable called new vote. I'm going to set it to an object, and we want the OS, which we can get from request.body.os. Okay, so if they choose Windows, Mac OS, whatever, and then points, we're going to set that to 1. Okay, so this is where we'll set the number of points, whether we want it to be 1 or 10 or whatever. And then what we'll have to do to add to the database is say new vote, okay, because we have a model called vote that we brought in. Actually, we did not bring in, we need to. So let's put a pin in that for a second and just go up here and bring that model in. So vote equals require, and that's going to be in /models/vote. Okay, now we can go down and we can say new vote, and we want to pass in that new vote variable, that object that I just created above, and we want to call .save, and then that gives us a promise back, so we want to do .then. Okay, and then inside this promise, it'll give us the vote that was added to the database. So what do we want to do with this? We want to then send out the trigger and the return. So I'm just going to cut this from here and move it into the promise, okay, or the promise response. So we're going to trigger OS poll, OS vote. That's all the same, except instead of just putting a 1 here, we want to put the vote dot points. okay, because it's basically giving us an object with the points, the OS, the ID. So we want vote points, but this is a string. Okay, it's going to be a string, so what I'm going to do is wrap it in parse int, because what that does is it takes a string and turns it to a number. Okay, and then for this one, we're simply going to say vote.os. So what's going to happen is when we hit vote, the option is going to go into, well, first of all, the OS is going to go into this object here. It's going to get put into new vote. We're going to then call new vote because we have vote set up as a model, as a schema. We can save the new vote, and then it'll give us a response from that as a promise, give us the data, and then we're going to then do the pusher.trigger, and we're going to pass in that response from that promise, the points in the OS. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So let's go ahead and save that. And then hopefully, let's reload the front end. Hopefully, if we vote for, let's say, Windows, it goes into our database. So let's try it out. It's not going to stick down here if I reload the page, but it should go into the database. So let's vote. So it shows down here, which it was before. If I reload, it's not going to. That's fine because we haven't added that yet. But let's take a look at the database. So we're going to go to collections, reload, and notice we now have a votes collection, and if I look at that, we have a Windows vote. Alright, so it looks like that's working. We can try it again. Let's do Mac vote. Okay, it shows down here initially. It's not going to stick though, but it should be in the database. So now if we go back and I reload our database, there's the Mac. Alright, so that's all set. Now what we want to do is make it so that when we initially come to the page, the votes, we can grab the votes and put them in the chart. Alright, so we're going to make the request to do that to this route here, this get route. So we can get rid of this, and then this is actually going to be really simple. We can take the model vote and we can call find. Okay, so find will do just that. It's going to give us a promise. So we'll do .then. We'll call this votes. Okay, the whatever it's returning, we're calling votes, and then we're simply going to return, let's say, res.json, and we'll send success true, and let's send votes as votes. Okay, so the response we'll get is just a success true, and then the array of votes will be inside of votes. So let's save this. And now our backend should be complete. Let's go to our front. So we'll go to public main.js, and let's see where we want to do this. Now we want to stay out of the form submit, so we'll go right below it here. And let's make a fetch request to HTTP localhost 3000/poll. Now this is going to hit the GET request. The one up here we did poll, but we said that it was the post request. Okay, this one will be the GET, which is what we just created. So let's pass in, actually we don't need to pass in anything, we just need to do our .then. And remember, first we have to take the result, turn it to JSON, and then do another then, and that's when we get the actual data. Alright, so in here we'll say data, and now this data, actually I'll just log it, you can see what it looks like and make sure that it works. So if we save this and we reload the front end, let's go up to right here, and this is what we're getting back from this right here, success true, and then votes is an array of the vote, which has the ID, the points, and the OS. Okay, so let's actually put it, instead of having to do data.votes, let's just put it into a variable called votes. So we'll say const votes equals data.votes. All right, I also want to get the total votes, which is really easy. So total votes, and we can get that by just saying votes dot length. All right, now what we want to do is count the vote points for each one. And the reason we're doing this is because we need to know what to put here, how many Mac votes, how many Linux votes. We need to know how to do that. So the best way that I could find to do this is to use the reduce high array function. All right, so what I'm going to do is say const vote counts, and this isn't to get the total votes, this is to get each one. Okay, how many Windows, how many Mac. So we can say votes dot reduce, just close this up. All right, now this reduce is going to take in two parameters, an accumulator and the current value. All right, so inside here, let's put in, we're going to use an arrow function, so I'm going to say ACC for the accumulator and then vote for the current value. And we're going to use an arrow function here. And then this is going to be a little difficult. I actually had to kind of look, on Stack Overflow for a solution for this because it kind of confused me a little. But what we're going to do is we're going to take that accumulator and we're going to say vote.os, and we want to set that equal to another set of parentheses, and we're going to say that accumulator, and then again vote.os, and then we're going to say or 0, and then we just want to add the points, okay, whatever the points are. So we'll say plus vote dot points, okay, which we get the points right here. Now points are set to 1. If I just wanted to use 1 all the time, I could just put a 1 here, but I don't. I want to be able to change points to, let's say, 10 if I want, and have them each worth 10 points. So that's why I'm using vote points. Now this is going to be a string by default, so what I want to do is wrap it in parse int, which will change it to a number. Alright, so it should look like that. And then reduce is going to take in a second parameter of the accumulator, like that. Alright, I think that's right. We might get an error, but I think that's right. And I understand that this is a little confusing. So now what we want to do is, let's see, the data points, all this stuff down here, it needs to go inside of the promise result here, inside the .then, because we need to use, for instance, vote counts, and if we use that here, then it's going to be undefined because it's out of scope. So we're going to grab everything from here down to the very end, and we're going to cut that, and we're going to put that right under the line we just wrote and paste that in. Alright, let me just format that. So now what we want to do, instead of just having 0 for each vote, we want to actually take the vote counts. So we can now say vote counts, and we should be able to do .windows. We should be able to do vote counts .mac OS. Make sure it matches the label. Vote counts .linux and vote counts .other. Okay, and that should work. Let's go ahead and save and close this up. Reload. Okay, so we're getting an error. Let's see what it is. ACC is not defined at fetch.then. See, we have an issue with this freaking line here. Oh, actually, you know what? I think we need to pass in an empty object here. Let me just put this on one line, because this is multiple lines is confusing me. So vote points, we have the accumulator, and then that should end. We should actually have another. What am I missing here? Oh, there should be 2 parentheses. There we go. All right, so that should work. Let's try that. Let's save and reload. All right, so there we go. Good. So now it's actually getting it from the database. We're getting the vote counts with this reduce right here, and then we're adding the vote counts for each system as the data point, as the correct data point. Let me make this smaller again. And then the whole reason I did this right here, the total votes equals the votes length, is because for the text, see where it says OS results, I actually don't want it to say that. I want it to show the votes. So I'm going to put some backticks in here and just say total votes, and then we can simply put in a variable, and we can put in the total votes variable, and let's reload, and we get total votes 2. All right, so let's go ahead and test it out. We'll open up a new tab, and let's paste that in there. So let's vote for, let's say, Mac vote, and now we have 2 Mac votes. Okay, and if I reload, it stays because it's in the database. All right, guys, that's it. All right, so that didn't take as long as I thought it would. So hopefully you learned a little something from this application. I will put the code on GitHub. I'll put the link in the description, and I might add on to this actually. I might add, maybe make it so you can only vote once, or maybe add some login functionality, maybe Google OAuth or something like that, and maybe do a deployment video. I'm not sure yet. But thanks for watching, guys. Please leave it a like if you did like this video. If you're not subscribed and you like this type of content, please do so, and I will see you next time. Hey guys, if you've been watching my videos for a while and you really like what I do and I've helped you out a lot, consider becoming a patron. Even for $1 per month, it pushes me to keep bringing you guys the best content I possibly can. There's reward tiers for discounts, free Udemy courses, personal support, and more. So check out the Patreon link in the description below for more info.